This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Evan Jansen. The show, of course, live, broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now with the whole show available on our YouTube channel. And on today's show, well, we look at the theft of more than 10 kilometres of railway line outside of Johannesburg recently. What is the real state of the fight against the AIDS pandemic in South Africa and on the continent? And then the Argentinian ambassador joins us for a chat in studio a little bit later. First, though, Katrine Milan gives us a news update.
Well, hello and welcome. I'm Katrine Milan, and let's take a look at the news making headlines this morning. Economic freedom fighters members have accused police of using live ammunition when attempting to disperse the crowd from the Gauteng provincial legislature in Johannesburg CBD yesterday evening. Police used stun grenades, rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse defiant members. EFF members had forced their way into the building earlier in the day and refused to leave. Party leader Julius Malema had led about 2,000 members to the legislature to protest against the removal of their NPLs for wearing red overalls. Labour Union Solidarity hopes the latest wage offer made by the Steel and Engineering Industries Federation of South Africa to end the ongoing metal sector strike will be accepted. Around 200,000 members of the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa downed tools in the automotive and metals industry on the 1st of July, bringing vast numbers of companies to a standstill. The striking workers are demanding a wage increase of 10% every year for the next 3 years. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has urged Israel to show maximum restraint in its military operations in the Gaza Strip. Speaking at a press conference in Tel Aviv yesterday, Moon strongly condemned rocket attacks, repeating that the sides must stop fighting, start talking and take on the root causes of the conflict. Meanwhile, major American and European airlines have cancelled flights to and from Israel after a rocket fired from Gaza landed near the airport in Tel Aviv. British air accident investigators will retrieve data from the black boxes of crashed flight MH17. UK Prime Minister David Cameron confirmed yesterday. This follows a request by authorities in the Netherlands, where the Malaysia Airlines plane had flown from before crashing in Ukraine last Thursday. 298 people, including 10 Britons, were killed in the crash. Bodies recovered from the crash site will be flown to the Netherlands today. And then the 20th Commonwealth Games start today in Glasgow, Scotland, where 71 countries will be showcasing 17 sporting codes for the next 11 days. The live opening ceremony, which will formally be opened by the Queen tonight at 10 p.m. South African time, is expected to attract a crowd of 40,000. The Games will have superstar sprinter Usain Bolt of Jamaica and middle long distance King Mo Farah of England as highlights of the sporting extravaganza. I'll remember all these top stories are available on our Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. And Yevon, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katrine. We start with a story from Nigel on the East Rand this morning, which earlier this month made even international news headlines when it emerged that up to 10 kilometres of railway line had been stolen in the small mining town. This by what appeared to be a highly professional gang of thieves. 10 kilometres of rail equals 960 tonnes of steel and its estimated value of around 2.6 million rand on the scrap market. According to reports, the Ekurhuleni municipality will replace the several kilometres that could cost up to 25 million rand to rebuild. Now, here in studio with us today is the spokesperson for Prasa Rail, Nana Zanani, to tell us a little bit more about how something like this happens. Good morning, Nana. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you.
Before we start, I understand there was some confusion as to who would be taking responsibility for the railway line, replacing it, and so forth. These sorts of things always end up being a political playball, one would think. Just clear that one up for us.
I think it's always been clear, and our sister company, Transnet, has actually stepped up and first of all explained who the owners of the rail are, which in this instance is Transnet. And I think that there may be a collaborative effort between the Ekurhuleni Metro as well as Transnet in terms of replacing and securing and obviously investigating the incident.
It's quite a bizarre thing to happen, completely out of the ordinary without really much of a precedent. Making even international news, 10 kilometres of railway line stolen. How did it happen and what does the investigations on your part show so far?
Because it is such a sensitive matter and the theft is, of course, of such a great scale, it won't be prudent of me to actually discuss the details of the investigation. Suffice to say that in terms of how we as Metro Rail look after our systems and our services when we do encounter such problems, we work together with the South African Police through their Rapid Police Unit. They then investigate and categorize all of these kind of similar and related incidences. So what happens is we would have a committee that would categorize the crimes and the hotspots and identify strategies on how to combat them.
There were reports that several of Metro Rail's trains were affected. Just give us an idea how this affected your operations, and then how do you combat this kind of thing going forward?
CLTE, which is the company that is responsible for refurbishing some of our old trains, has about 300 odd trains that are waiting to be dispatched. Of course, with the absence of the rail at the moment, those trains are standing still. So what we've done at the moment is to work together with them from a security point of view. But it is a case where we are operating at less of the capacity than we would like. So in this instance, we just have to wait and allow the processes to take place.
What's the kind of image that's being sent out to the rest of the world? It's been reported all around the world. BBC, several news sites all around the world had this on. What kind of image does it send about the railway systems in South Africa?
I think you have to look at the steel industry globally does in one way or the other, especially within rail and, of course, copper theft. There is that ongoing problem globally. But I think what makes it so major is because there is a misconception that the trains that are sitting at CLT at the moment are the new trains. And then, in fact, they are our old fleet that we are upgrading. That fleet will then work together with the new fleet when they do arrive to actually compensate some of the areas and to push our modernization program over a 20-year period. In terms of the image, because this is not something that is necessarily done as a result of our actions as Metro Rail, I think there is sympathy to a large extent in terms of the cost and the time that it would take to replace such amount of rail.
Do we have a handle on the market? Which kind, where would this be marketed? Or do we have enough unscrupulous scrapyard owners in South Africa that would simply take that on board?
I think to put it differently to you is that we have, from a legislative point of view, what we call the Second-Hand Goods Act. And that act has been promulgated precisely to make sure that whoever deals with any second-hand material, including coppers and steel, would have a certificate of origin, or at least know where the material that they're trading in comes from. Then we're able to track. We've also gone a step further as Metro Rail, and I'm sure with our sister company Transnet, as well as Eskom, to educate the scrap metal dealers so that they can identify our materials, because they all have specific signatures from the manufacturers.
Yesterday, Prasa Rail had a site visit in Nigel with some international guests. Just tell us what was the purpose of the visit and what came out?
I think there needs to be a balance between the expectation of new trains and the current challenge that we face in terms of the old infrastructure and rolling stock. What are we going to do when the new trains arrive? Are we just going to send out all those trains in all different areas? And I think this is what we were putting into perspective, that what we are doing currently as Metro Rail is firstly looking at the stock that we have available, assessing the needs and taking those trains in to have them fully refurbished from the electrical wires, even the replacement of some of the steel fittings that render our trains vulnerable to vandalism. The purpose of that was to actually showcase, first of all, this is how we're going to refurbish our trains. This is what they're going to look like. These will be running in conjunction with the new trains, where the new trains will have a particular route that is established for them to run on, which has been completely refurbished. The old sets would then complement that, and what we limit is the breakdowns, and we want to increase the performance of our fleet. It's an ongoing process. one which I hope I can invite you to come and have a look at and see for yourself the work that we do.
Indeed, we will follow up on it. And one of our producers was going to go with you yesterday, but unfortunately couldn't because we had some issues with myself not being.
Understandably, the offer is still on the table.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us today, Nana, and giving us a little insight, which is a worrying but in a way a very interesting and typical South African story in a way. Thank you again for joining us and giving us a view as to what you guys are dealing with at Prosa Rail.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's now take a look at what you're talking about on social media at SABC Newsroom. That's where you can contact us on Twitter. We've also got a Facebook page that's very well up to date. We love your pictures, your comments, and your opinions. Of course, Gatanya Bella says, people who voted EFF understand the significance of yesterday's march. Only ANC and DA voters who attacked the EFF on social media. Dumigwebo says, when are they going to do the work they promised the people instead of wasting time fighting to wear red overalls? Really? Yeah, that's a legitimate question being asked. Ramapakela Moloko says, EFF members must learn to behave. Simplistic in a way. And Mateta says, the EFF is a breath of fresh air. Only for some, it seems. Tahir says, another party that people wasted their votes on. Carrying on like crazy people. EFF, hashtag South Africa. We love your views at SABC Newsroom. Keep it coming. Now, 35 million people in the world are living with HIV, and over half of those, 24.7 million, live in sub-Saharan Africa. South Africa has both the highest number of people with HIV in the world and the highest number of new infections, according to the 2013 UNAIDS report released last week. The country is second only to Nigeria in the number of deaths from AIDS, with 13% of the global number, 1% less than Nigeria, that is. An advantage is that South Africa stands head and shoulders above the rest of the world in the number of people receiving antiretroviral treatment. Now, to talk to us more about this topic today, we are joined by Professor Helen Rees, the Executive Director of the WITS Reproductive Health and HIV Institute. Good morning, Professor, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Big numbers, very concerning as always. I'm sure the first question you always hear is, are we losing this war against AIDS? That's a question, a legitimate question. But I want to ask you about, at the conferences, the AIDS conferences that we see, there's always a very positive picture being painted about us making inroads in the fight against AIDS. And at the last one in Durban, it almost came out that we are winning the war against AIDS. What are your views?
Well, I think you're right. It's a balance. I think we've made enormous strides, particularly in the last few years in South Africa, particularly with the leadership of the health minister who prioritised HIV in a way it wasn't prioritised before. So we've got more people on treatment, we've got more people testing, we've reduced infections in newborn infants tremendously to under 2% from where they were. So that's an enormous stride. And we're losing fewer people, and we've got fewer percentage-wise new infections. However, I think the worry is that if you talk too optimistically too soon, then you actually take your eye off what we're trying to achieve here. We are not about to win the war on AIDS. We have to get many more people onto treatment. We need to get many more people accessing prevention technologies. We need better technologies to prevent HIV. And if we start to celebrate too soon, we really are at risk of doing ourselves as a country a disservice.
The concerning thing for me in all of the numbers there, Professor, is that the highest number of new infections in South Africa. Is this a case of apathy and people are not really interested in the kind of campaigns that we are running? And then what do we need to do to strengthen those campaigns?
You're absolutely right. Look, the rates of new infections is beginning to slow, so that's really good. So something is definitely happening. But you're a media person, and you know that if you keep saying the same old, particularly to young people, they're going to get disinterested. So we need to renew our thinking. 1 in 4 of our new infections are young women. How do we access young women? If the message has got stale, if we're not getting people to test and to go on to treatment, if that momentum is beginning to slow, we need to keep looking. But in addition, we have got things that work, and we need to implement them. We need to get more people onto treatment, which will also help prevention. We need to get more men volunteering to be circumcised. There are a whole number of things that we know that work, and we need to redouble our efforts. But the context, you're quite right, we need to say, how do we best do this? How do we access all of these groups where we're seeing new infections?
From my experience in the reading that I've done in recent times, is the high risk group would be the 15 to about 24-year-olds. If I stand to be corrected on this, is it not a scenario then that we have to find a way to speak in a vernacular that this group understands?
And, we've been trying to do that. If you look at groups like Soul City and Love Life, and many of the initiatives have really, really tried to talk in that language. But we're not really, it's more than just a message. A message is part of it. Getting people to understand and take personal responsibility is definitely part of it. But we have to say, why are these young women, why are so many of them becoming infected? And there we've got to look at just beyond the biology of young women, which is vulnerable. We have to say, what's the driver? It is things like poverty. It's things like young girls dropping out of school, but it's also things like safety in our schools. So there are many other things around the whole social milieu in our country that we need to address, in addition to keeping that communication message relevant.
We also see within that group the rise of new, call it whatever we want to call it, new designer drugs and drug abuse and that sort of thing. And this leads to risky behavior within that specific group. Should we not tie the fabric of all these campaigns together in a way?
You're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things about HIV, the very nature of the disease, is that it's absolutely linked to core issues about our social, what we find acceptable and what we find not acceptable in our society. Something like drugs and alcohol, gender violence, which we all know separately is a major part. All of these things will drive HIV. We do need to see this as much as a health issue as a development issue.
What about in certain parts of the country? Antiretroviral drugs have become mainstream drugs that, some HIV sufferers are being robbed of their medicine, and this is being smoked. Is that a concern?
Well, I think it's Nyoke, and the concern is that it seems that the use of that seems to be anecdotally increasing quite considerably amongst young people. Whether that is being played out with theft of antiretrovirals from patients. We have seen that previously. It hasn't been reported as a widespread issue, but clearly, if efavirenz, which is the one drug that's meant to be in this mixture, if that is there, it's been got from somewhere.
Finally, Professor, can we, as South Africans, justify the cost of fighting AIDS with the results we've been getting to now? And then is it not maybe time for us to change gear and go a different direction if we're not?
Well, I certainly think we can justify so far the investment that we've made, because we have made as a country enormous impacts on terms of numbers of people on treatment, as I say, new infections and new infections amongst children. So we can certainly justify it. What I think we have to do is to, really regularly press the pause button and say, are we still heading in the right direction? And what can we do to continuously critique our programs?
Professor, thank you very much for joining us. We've run out of time. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and we could talk at length even a little bit further. But thank you for your unique insights this morning.
Thank you very much.
That's Professor Helen Rees, the Executive Director of the WITS Reproductive Health and HIV Institute, giving us, her insights into the pandemic that South Africa has been battling with for the last 20 years at least. Let's now take a look at what's happening in the rest of the world. The front pages of the world reads as such. The Independent has labelled it, "No end in sight for the long-suffering people of Israel and Gaza." Same questions asked on the US front pages. When will the suffering end? Then also the latest on flight MH1717. The British air accident investigators will retrieve data from the black boxes of the crash flight MH17. UK Prime Minister David Cameron has confirmed this yesterday. Then a beautiful photo on the Herald front page. The 20th Commonwealth Games start today. The Games will have superstar sprinter Usain Bolt of Jamaica and middle and long distance king Mo Farah of England as the major attractions at the sporting extravaganza. Now, yesterday, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon urged Israel to show maximum restraint in its military operation on the Gaza Strip. Speaking at a joint press conference with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv, Ban said he strongly condemns rocket attacks.
Palestinians and Israeli mothers are burying their children. My message to Israelis and Palestinians is the same. Stop fighting, start talking, and take on the root causes of the conflict so we are not back to the same situation in another 6 months or a year.
I once saw a flower blossom through 27 prison bars of yesterday's unjust flames. I felt an old woman's anticipation for the country's first open elections. And I heard the loud celebrations of that flower's historic inauguration. I was there when Unity sang of how the Springbok never held anything back. And we saw a first-time band of 11 men, Shibobo possibility throughout the land. At the foot of Africa, time remembers how truth can reconcile a people. We carved our name into space, and on the world stage, our art stood united. When we blow that vuvuzela, the whole world goes into a trance. And even in that tearful hour of the flower's separation, we are a people who see the music and hear the flowers dance. SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Welcome back here with Newsroom here on SABC News. The crucial police witness, known only as Mr. X, has come to the defense of the police, saying they acted in self-defense when they shot and killed 34 mine workers during an unprotected strike in August 2012 in Marikana. Mr. X says the police had to shoot, otherwise the mine workers would have killed them. He's testifying before the Marikana Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria. Scores of others were wounded during this assault. For the latest, we cross to our reporter, Ntombi Mia, who's live outside the Farlam Commission. A very good morning, Ntombi, as always. Nice to see you.
Very good morning to you, Ivan.
Before we start with proceedings today, Ntombi, there's been some developments, another killing overnight. Is that accurate?
Very true, Eben. It's been a very somber mood here outside the commission. Before proceedings got underway, a group of the miners that were involved in the particular strikes in 2012 were standing outside here talking about how heartbroken they were over the death of one of their comrades. Now, the man that has been shot and killed, it has been confirmed by our Northwest office as well as by police. He is known by the nickname of Bai, and he was shot and killed late last night, and he comes from the Korea mine. He was also an Amku shop steward. Now, you'll remember Bai is one of the men that was implicated in Mr. X's testimony. Mr. X had said on Monday that Bai was one of the group of militant strikers that had helped to hack off lawman security guard Hassan Fundi's his chin, his nose, and some of his cheek, and he then taken that particular plastic. Now, this was Bai. Bai had taken that particular plastic that contained Hassan Fundi's flesh and had handed it over to the Sangoma. Now, at the moment, it's unclear why Bai was killed, but some of the words that we heard from the miners that were here outside was said it could possibly be of revenge killing, perhaps by the lawman security guards, perhaps by police. I mean, at this stage, it's still unconfirmed who possibly could have shot and killed Bai at this stage.
Now, just give us the latest. Mr. X came back to continue with his testimony, and then will that continue today?
You remember Mr. X yesterday complained of a stomach ache. This was around 11 o'clock in the morning yesterday. And he really did seem to struggle to give his testimony, prompting Judge Ian Farlam to then ask Mr. X if he needed some sort of medical attention. He was then taken to a doctor, which we take it for granted that Mr. X was taken to a doctor in the nearby area where he's been kept in an undisclosed location. And from there, he was then seen by the doctor and then booked off for 2 days. It's so unclear at the moment when Mr. X is likely to come back and give his testimony, most likely on Friday. But if that doesn't happen, he will most likely return back on Monday to continue with his cross-examination. But it's going to be very difficult for Mr. X to give his cross-examination, considering that the testimony that he's given over the past week led to this particular killing. So it certainly will be a very difficult time for Mr. X. It will also be a very difficult time for the SAPS and for the miners themselves who lost a comrade in arms.
Before we carry on with what's expected then for the rest of the week, there was quite a bitter exchange between Advocate Dalim Mpofu, who's representing the miners, and Mr. X. Just recap for us what happened there yesterday.
Also, Dalim Mpofu has begun with his cross-examination of Mr. X. There does seem to be a bit of a personality clash between the two, leading to Mr. X complaining that Dalim Mpofu was not respecting him and did not speak to him with the respect that he deserved as an individual. Dalim Mpofu has sort of been condescending to Mr. X. Mr. X was dressed in a tie, a yellow tie, and a formal shirt and a jacket on Monday morning. And Dalim Mpofu picked up on that and he asked him, why are you dressed in different clothes? Did you not tell us that because you were doing your Muti rituals, your Sangoma had told you not to change your clothes over the next few weeks up until you are done with your testimony? Leading Mr. X to explain to Dalim Mpofu that he'd converted to Christianity and he was no longer using Muti. Therefore, he was changing his clothes to show that he was a changed man and that he'd gone to church on Sunday in Cape Town. And that really was the start of this backwards and forwards between Dalim Mpofu and Mr. X, a very belligerent Mr. X, at one point refusing to answer Dalim Mpofu's questioning, which did frustrate Advocate Dalim Mpofu to a certain extent, and it led Advocate Ian Farlam to step in and to basically calm the waters and to explain that to Mr. X that he was a witness, he is facing cross-examination, and he has absolutely no right to ask the lawyers any questions or to really give any cheek to the lawyers. His role there was to be honest and give an honest, truthful account of the events that had happened there.
Mr. X is the guy that's really changed the mood of the entire commission, it seems, until now, Ntombi. But once he's done, or now that he's not going to be there today, what's the expectation then today and then for the rest of the week?
Well, Mr. X certainly has changed the game here. He certainly has changed the tone. It's become a lot more stringent in terms of how realistic the situation really there. He's brought home how difficult it has been for the miners and the real truth of what happened behind it. You remember that Mr. X's testimony has basically been dismissed by the evidence leaders and also some of the legal representatives that are here. But especially with what's happened recently, it does show that there is some semblance of truth to whatever it is that he said in his testimony, and that's raised the game right here. And it no longer just becomes about the commission. It becomes about people's lives, and it becomes about how serious and how heartbreaking the situation at the particular mines are. But what we are anticipating throughout the course of the day today, and most likely the bulk of tomorrow, will be the Lonmin's Vice President of Operations at the Korea Mine in 2012, Michael Da Costa, and we're anticipating that he'll be able to give us some evidence from Lonmin's perspective as to why they did not accede to the miners' demands and why they didn't want to negotiate with the miners. Initially, if Lonmin had agreed to the wage negotiation or had come up with a different settlement, we wouldn't be finding ourselves in this position where 34 miners were killed and several other people were killed as a result of it. It would have ended there and then had Lonmin decided that they were going to play ball with Lonmin and they had not stuck to their guns. So it certainly will be very interesting to hear what Da Costa has to say on behalf of Lonmin.
Thank you very much, and Tommy, that's live from the Farnham Commission of Inquiry into the death of 34 miners here in South Africa. Northern Tombi Mia giving us a live update. She'll also give us unique insight as how the story develops. It's a very tender and very interesting story that's been ongoing in South Africa for the best part of 2 years now. Let's take a quick look at what you are talking about on social media. Imran Awan says over 600 people killed in Gaza and still no condemnation of Israel and its collective punishment from Ban Ki-moon. We show you a little clip earlier where Ban Ki-moon asked for hostilities to end or no more rockets to be fired. Light to candle, says Ban Ki-moon, at last says the right words, but we need to ensure the UN has the necessary power to back them up. Ziad says, Ban Ki-moon, you believe Israel has the right to self-defense while Palestinians in Gaza under attack have only the right to die. Shame on you. Oh, let's take a quick look now at what's happening on our Facebook page today. You will see there that the cross-examination of state witness Begizita Kumalo will continue in the trial of Czech fugitive Radovan Krecher and 5 others. Right there on our Facebook page. You can also read more on United Nations Chief Ban Ki-moon, who has called for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and on why the mother of the 4-year-old who was killed in a hijacking incident in Reiche Park near Benoni on Gauteng's East Rand here in South Africa says she has made peace with the loss. You can find all those stories and more on our Facebook page. Just /Newsroom, or go into the search bar, type in Newsroom, we'll pop up first. Now, today, in the year 2000, Tiger Woods became the 5th and youngest player in golf history to achieve the career Grand Slam of golf. That's winning all 4 major championships, the Masters, US Open, British Open and the PGA Championship. He followed in the footsteps of Gene Sarazen, Jack Nicklaus, Ben Hogan and South Africa's very own Gary Player. Let's take a quick look at the day he achieved this career milestone.
The record shared by Jack Nicklaus and Lee Jansen. And it's inside right edge and solid. And Tiger Woods is the 100th U.S. Open champion in history.
Technology is all around us and is improving lives across Africa, like how young Nigerians are connecting to the internet. There are doctors finding new ways to save lives in Cameroon, and the South African public transport system that is now getting Wi-Fi. We have gadgets, apps and loads more, some of which play a big role in Africa's growth. A huge part of this African growth is technological innovation. To find out a bit more about social media and technology news from here in Africa and abroad, join me, Siphumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's have a look at the news making headlines this morning. Economic freedom fighters members have accused police of using live ammunition when attempting to disperse the crowd from the Gauteng provincial legislature in Johannesburg CBD yesterday evening. Police used stun grenades, rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse defiant members. EFF members had forced their way into the building earlier in the day and refused to leave. Party leader Julius Malema had led about 2,000 members to the legislature to protest against the removal of their MPLs for wearing red overalls. Labour Union Solidarity hopes the latest wage offer made by the Steel and Engineering Industries Federation of South Africa to end the ongoing metal sector strike will be accepted. Around 200,000 members of the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa downed tools in the automotive and metals industry on the 1st of July, bringing vast numbers of companies to a standstill. The striking workers are demanding a wage increase of 10% every year for the next 3 years. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has urged Israel to show maximum restraint in its military operation in the Gaza Strip. Speaking at a press conference in Tel Aviv yesterday, Moon strongly condemned rocket attacks, repeating that the sides must stop fighting, start talking and take on the root causes of the conflict. Meanwhile, major American and European airlines have cancelled flights to and from Israel after a rocket fired from Gaza landed near the airport in Tel Aviv. British air accident investigators will retrieve data from the black boxes of crashed flight MH17, UK Prime Minister David Cameron confirmed yesterday. This follows a request by authorities in the Netherlands, where the Malaysia Airlines plane had flown from before crashing in the Ukraine last Thursday. 298 people, including 10 Britons, were killed in the crash. Bodies recovered from the crash site will be flown to the Netherlands today. And the 20th Commonwealth Games start today in Glasgow, Scotland, where 71 countries will be showcasing 17 sporting codes for the next 11 days. The live opening ceremony, which will be formally opened by the Queen tonight at 10 p.m. South African time, is expected to attract a crowd of 40,000. The Games will have superstar sprinter Usain Bolt of Jamaica and middle and long distance King Mo Farah of England as highlights of the sporting extravaganza. Remember, all these top stories are available on our Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Yeben, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katrine. Of course, we'll keep you updated on this very channel how South Africa performs at the Commonwealth Games in Scotland. But this week, the Department of Arts and Culture, in partnership with the Embassy of Argentina, will for the very first time host the Argentinian Cultural Week here in South Africa. This to strengthen the exchange of creative ideas and human relations. Artists from both countries will collaborate in dance pieces, amongst others. There will also be a strong focus on theatre, music and film. Now, to tell us more about the week-long event taking place in Soweto, we are joined by the Argentinian ambassador, Carlos Cersale de Cerizano, and by the Director of International Relations, Eloise Graham, here in the studio this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, if I can start with you, do we need to strengthen relationships that much on a cultural basis between South Africa and Argentina?
Well, this is the beginning, really. We signed an agreement, a bilateral agreement in 2011. From there, we start to work in individual cases, but it's performances. But this is a new concept. That is, everything that is going to be done will be through joint collaboration between artists and producers and all the people linked to the industrial culture all together. So that's the way that we will start a long-term relationship in the areas that you were mentioning: dance, theater, music, and it's photography, exhibitions, and a lot of things that will happen, because this is the way to link people and institutions together in countries that in the sector of art and culture they don't know much each other. So basically that's the concept.
Tell us a little bit about the week, Eloise, and how it will be, how it will happen, and why we choose to have it in Soweto.
Well, thank you, Evan. We have a little program which is also, I don't know whether they can see that. It's also on the website of the Embassy and the website of the Department of Arts and Culture. And as the ambassador indicated, the intention is to bring people and artists together. So we have series of events running the whole week. Highlight in Soweto tonight, but there are events happening in other venues in Pretoria and other venues, and we cover all the genres, not only dance and music, but there is theatre, very prominent theatre, exhibitions, fantastic exhibitions, which will open tomorrow in the Africa Museum, Museum Africa in Johannesburg, photographic exhibitions. So there's a number of events that will run for the whole week. And the idea is we know that culture is a very powerful tool to bring people together.
Mr. Ambassador, I just want to show to our viewers the Cultural Week, the sort of program and what it's all about. But just give us your ideas and the expectation that you have from this event.
Yeah, sure. It's well, we're trying to reach a target of 7,500 people, mainly youth. That's why Soweto in the Soweto Theatre is going to be combined dance group, contemporary dance, hip hop, and putting together 10 Argentinian dancers with 10 South Africans. It's two groups, very professionals both, and people will dance with them and will be in the stairs with an open space. Same we are going to do in Santon Square and in the University of Johannesburg with the same group, following by one of the best tango bandoneonists that we have is the trio Medeiros, play with the New School Orchestra. So they are going to, it's a symphonic tango. It's not the acrobatic tango that everyone knows. It's the one that we want to promote. The acrobatic tango is fine, but this is more musically educated. It's together with the New School Orchestra, that is the Miyagi project. Theatre is will be the preview will be done this evening in the Theatre of the Square in Santon, and it's is an Argentinian writer with South African artists, very successful in Graaftown last week, very good reviews, and photography exhibition. The photography is, why photography and not painting? It's because we identify in the Gallery of Contemporary Arts here, it's that photography is what really attracts more the attention of people here. Yeah. So, and we choose subjects that really will be understood for the South African public because it's based on our past. It's when democracy was restored, and things related to how the families of the victims suffer. So that's one of the exhibition is called Absences. That is the 30,000 is the related to the 30,000 disappears that we have during our last military dictatorship between 76 and 83. And the other is a woman, is photography about women. Yeah. And it's what you see in women that suffer in jails and things that are very much linked to both parts of the countries.
Louise, I see one of the highlights, I think, for South Africans would be, we had the documentary on the show about a month ago, The Lost Boers of Patagonia. It's a very interesting story of South Africans of Afrikaans descent who went over to Argentina more than 100 years ago. And this will be highlighted as one of the items during the Cultural Week, wouldn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, again, it's a question of strengthening relations between the two countries in all areas. You know, from historical to heritage to arts to culture. And, of course, for us, it's also about exposure to the new generation. So that is an item of history. But we want the youth to also know, and the young people of today, to take up relations with their counterparts in Argentina. So it's more than just a showcase, it's more than just history. It's also about involving the youth and giving them opportunities. And as the Ambassador indicated, the events are all happening in partnership. Yeah. So we are trying to do skills development and exchanges, and there's some job opportunities as well for the young people.
And before I wrap, Your Excellency, this is an event that hopefully you'll be hosting every year from now on in.
Well, and also South Africa will host in Argentina. So as we are doing the Argentinian Week in South Africa next year in April, because this is in the context of 20 years of democracy in South Africa and 30 years of democracy in Argentina. So the last week of April next year, in principle, South Africa is going to be hosting a South African Week in Argentina. We hope to have the Minister of Art and Culture there. And will be great. And it's the basis, now the seed, we are now planting the seeds for this joint collaboration that is going to be reflected in activities next year in Argentina and others also here in a context of the biennial program of work.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us today and giving us an insight into what is an exciting development in bilateral relations between our two countries. And also, from International Relations, Eloise Graham joining us this morning with the Argentinian ambassador, Carlos Cersali Di Cerisano, joining us today and talking about Argentinian Cultural Week that is due to start in South Africa. Now, finally, Katrine is standing by with South Africa's hottest trio. Group, that is, for those of you that don't know. They're called Rubber Duck, and, they guarantee to have your feet tapping right on the board there at home. So, Katrine, it's over to you.
Yes, Stay With Me is the follow-up to the hugely successful debut single, Ain't Nobody Got Time For That, which owned the chart on many radio stations. We are today joined by two of the Ducks, Nick Jordan and Sheldon Sham, to talk about their new single. But before we get to that, let's just have a sneak peek.
It's like your memories away before they fall to pieces. And if you love somebody that don't care, you care anyway. Oh, let us live like it's they will. They will stay with me. Oh, honey, all our memories of love.
Well, Nick and Sheldon, welcome to Newsroom.
Yeah, thanks. Good to know.
It seems like it's been quite a journey since the release of Ain't Nobody Got Time For That.
Wow, yeah, man. I mean, we can't complain. I mean, we didn't expect our first single to do as well as it did. So, putting it out there just like on pure risk alone, just trying to see what's going to happen, it did really well for us. It kind of gave us a name in the industry, which is great.
We had you guys on the show just as the single was released, and I know we're missing a duck today.
Yeah.
Just tell us, how has the journey been since that release?
Man, it's been crazy, going from almost playing one show a month to playing like multiple shows a month, getting booked for festivals coming up in the year, and just like a lot of media. It's been great for us. Something new in our lives. What would you say? Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting. A lot of surprises and busy. Yeah.
You guys, I know you guys performed at Lesotho Land as well,
Yeah.
and you've been charting the tops on the radio stations. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, we never expected that. We're not fortune tellers, but it did really well for us. Like I said, we didn't expect that song to do so well, and it's very hard to put it into words. As a first single, it's not often that it does happen in the country. So we're just very fortunate. We're glad that people picked up on it the way they did.
Now you're back with Stay With Me. Tell me more about the background to the music video, message, and the production. I see you guys traveled a lot.
We were actually shooting an EPK at the time, and with our very good friend Carl White, who shoots all our music videos, and he was down with us on the trip, and we went down to Durban, and we were sitting there having a beer, and we were like, well, why don't we just shoot the music video at the same time? So we did that, and we put the whole compilation of our tour together, and we just made it, because the song's really about memories, and what memories we were making there.
Yeah. Yes, the message in the background to the music to the song.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of people misconceive it to be about a relationship or between a guy and a girl or whatever, but it's actually just more about memories. And
Now, Ain't Nobody Got Time For That was such a huge success.
Yeah.
What are your expectations for this music video, for the single?
Like I said, it's so hard to look into the future. I mean, I wish I could look into the future, but I do. Look, we hope it does better. I mean, there's no guarantees, but we really hope it does better. It's our first real thing that we're really proud of. Besides, I don't get time for that. So yeah, if it does well, it does better. We just want all our songs to do as well as they can.
Now, where can people get hold of the music, to all of your music?
There's iTunes. You can get a hold of us on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everything. You just look for Rubber Duck Music, and it's duck without the K, DUC, like as on my hats. And then that's how you can follow us and just post your stuff. Check out what we're playing.
What's coming up for later in this year?
more singles. And then hopefully an album near the end of the year or maybe beginning of next year, and then a few festivals. And
we got a few festivals, that's cool. Playing in Durban at Music on the Lake, playing at the St. Peter's, I think it's in one of the school festivals. We're getting booked quite a lot, which is really cool. It's exciting.
Now, can you just tell us, for people who don't know Rubber Duck, just summarize your music, your style, and then just each of your roles in the band?
Cool, man. I would say it's very hard to classify us into a certain genre, but we'd say folk hop, folk swing, psychedelic folk. It's really folky with a lot of catchy folky melodies, mixed with hip-hop beats. And I'm the vocalist and one of the guitarists and the kick drum player.
I play saxophone, and then I've got some percussion as well. And then the other member, Brendan, who's
in Thailand
at the moment, he plays guitar, backing vocals, and also percussion.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us this morning on the show. And we'll be sure to upload the music video to our Facebook page. We'll also post the link on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Yevon, back to you.
Thank you very much, Katrina. Well, we're going to wrap it now. Of course, I could give you the whole spiel, but we're not going to do that today. We've got Rubber Duck music video that we're going to play out. This is Newsroom. We love it in the morning.
It's like your memories away before they fall to pieces. And if you love somebody that don't care,